She was just a maid from Africa, working in a mansion where everyone feared the man who lived inside. A man whose heart was as cold as the walls around him, and whose son had lost his sight and his smile. But when this woman did what no one else dared to do, when she reached out, not with pity, but with love, everything changed. The boy began to see again, not with his eyes, but with his heart. And the billionaire who once believed love was weakness, learned that sometimes, the poorest soul carries the richest heart. This is the story of the maid who touched the heart of the cold CEO's blind son. A story of faith, healing, and a love that saw beyond sight. Before we start, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? It means a lot seeing people connect through these stories. The rain had just stopped when Nia Okoro stepped out of the taxi. She stood before the tall iron gates of the Tanaka estate, her breath catching at the sight. The mansion beyond was enormous, more like a palace than a home, its windows glinting coldly under the grey Tokyo sky. A cherry blossom tree leaned over the stone wall, its petals scattered like pink confetti across the wet pavement. She clutched her small handbag tightly. The hiring agency had warned her, do not speak to the master unless spoken to. Do not speak to the boy. Do your work quietly, and leave before dark. It sounded more like a rulebook for survival than a job description. The gates creaked open. A security guard in a black suit nodded stiffly and motioned her inside. You are the new housemaid, yes? His Japanese was clipped, his tone polite but distant. Yes, sir, Nia answered softly, bowing slightly the way she had been taught. The path leading up to the mansion was lined with cherry blossoms and trimmed hedges. Everything was beautiful but cold, like a painting hung in a museum. She followed the guard up the steps, the sound of her wet shoes echoing faintly. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and money. Crystal chandeliers glowed overhead, and the floor was so shiny she could almost see her reflection. A woman in a grey uniform approached briskly. Her name tag read Mrs. Saito, head of staff. You're late, she said sharply. I'm sorry, The rain delayed the train, Nia replied politely. Mrs. Saito's eyes flicked over her dark skin and worn shoes. You're not from here. No, Nigeria. Mrs. Saito gave a thin smile. You will find Japan demanding. The master expects perfection. Follow instructions. Speak little. Work hard. Do not go near the boy. The boy? Nia asked, curious. The woman's lips tightened. Kenji. The master's son. He doesn't like strangers. You'll know him if you hear the piano. With that, Mrs. Saito turned and led her down a long hallway filled with portraits of stern-looking men in black suits. The air felt heavy with silence and rules. They passed closed doors, a grand staircase, and finally reached the servants' quarters. This will be your room, Mrs. Saito said, opening a small door. Work begins at 6. Breakfast at 7. Dismissed at 8 in the evening. Nia nodded, thanking her. When the woman left, she sat on the narrow bed, exhaling slowly. I can do this, she told herself. I've faced harder things than cold looks. As night fell, she wandered quietly through the mansion, dusting the endless shelves and polishing vases. Everything gleamed but felt lifeless, as if joy had been locked away long ago. Then, faintly, she heard it, soft piano notes drifting through the corridor. Slow, hesitant, almost uncertain. The melody was beautiful but sad, like a child trying to remember how happiness once sounded. Nia followed the sound to a half-open door. She peeked inside. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of a small lamp. In the center sat a little boy, his hands on the piano keys. He couldn't have been more than 8. His eyes were closed, his face calm but distant. His fingers moved carefully, searching for notes by touch. Kenji, whispered a voice behind her. Nia jumped. Mrs. Saito stood there, her face hard. I told you not to disturb him. I just heard the music, Nia stammered. Stay away, the woman said coldly. The boy does not speak to anyone. He is different. It's better that way. As Mrs. Saito walked away, Nia glanced one last time into the room. The boy kept playing, unaware of the world outside his music. Her heart ached. Different, they said. But all she saw was a lonely child surrounded by silence. That night, Nia couldn't sleep. The memory of the boy at the piano replayed in her mind, the way he tilted his head slightly, as if listening to something only he could hear. She whispered to the ceiling, "You don't scare me, little one. I know what it feels like to be alone too." Outside, the rain started again, gentle and rhythmic, like a lullaby for the lonely. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, painting golden lines on the polished floor. Nia tied her apron and joined the other maids in the kitchen. The smell of rice porridge and roasted fish filled the air. Mrs. Saito barked instructions as if conducting an orchestra. "Master Tanaka takes his coffee black, no sugar. The boys' breakfast must be soft food only, no crunchy textures. Remember that." Nia nodded silently, carrying a tray of fruit up the grand staircase. Every step creaked under her nervous feet. At the end of the corridor, she found the door she had peeked through the night before. She hesitated, then knocked softly. No reply. She pushed the door open. Kenji sat by the window this time, his fingers trailing over the piano keys without pressing them. He didn't turn when she entered. "Good morning," Nia said gently, setting the tray on the table. "I brought you breakfast." Still nothing. The boy's head tilted slightly, listening. "Your breakfast," she repeated, a bit louder. "Would you like me to help?" He turned his face toward her voice, eyes blank but beautiful, gray like storm clouds. "Who are you?" His voice was small, uncertain. "I'm Nia," she said softly. "I started working here yesterday." He frowned a little. "You're not like the others." She smiled. "Is that bad?" He shook his head. "You sound different. Like sunlight." Nia blinked. "Sunlight?" "Yes." He reached out a small hand, searching the air. Hesitantly, she stepped closer. His fingers brushed her wrist, then her face. "You're warm," he said simply. Something in her chest tightened. "And you're very kind to say that." He smiled faintly but didn't eat. "I don't like to eat when it's quiet." "Then let's not be quiet," she said. "May I tell you a story?" He nodded eagerly. She began telling him a story from her childhood, a story about a clever tortoise who tricked the river spirits to save his village. Her voice danced with rhythm and humor, and soon, Kenji laughed, a small, bright sound that filled the gloomy room. "That's funny," he said between giggles. "Tell me more about the tortoise." "I will, but only if you finish your food first," she said playfully. He smiled and picked up his spoon obediently. As he ate, she noticed the way he counted steps from the table to the chair, how he moved carefully, memorizing each space. When breakfast was done, he asked, "Why did you come here?" "To work," she replied. "Don't you have family?" She hesitated. "They're far away. But I'll see them again one day." Kenji turned his face toward the window. "I wish I could see things too," he whispered. Her heart clenched. She walked closer and knelt beside him. "You see in your own way," she said softly. "You play the piano beautifully. You see with your heart." He tilted his head. "That's what my mother used to say." Nia froze. "Your mother?" "She used to sing when I played. But after the car crash, she stopped singing." His small hands tightened on the piano keys. "Then she went to sleep and never woke up." Tears filled Nia's eyes, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm sorry, Kenji. That's very sad." He nodded. "Papa doesn't sing either. He only works." "Maybe he forgot how," Nia said gently. "Sometimes people forget when they are hurting." Kenji's lips quivered. "Do you think he'll ever sing again?" "I think someone just needs to remind him of the music," she said, smiling softly. The door suddenly opened. Both of them turned. A tall man in a black suit stood there, Riku Tanaka himself. He was younger than Nia expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp features and an expression carved from stone. His dark eyes swept the room, cold and assessing. "What are you doing here?" His deep voice filled the space like thunder. Nia jumped to her feet, bowing quickly. I brought breakfast for your son, sir." "Mrs. Saito already assigned that task," he said flatly. Kenji wanted." But before she could finish, Kenji spoke up. "Papa, she told me a story." Riku's expression shifted slightly. surprise flickering across his face. A story? Kenji nodded eagerly. About a tortoise who saved his village. It was funny. Riku's gaze moved to Nia again, studying her. No one had seen Kenji smile in months, and now this woman, this stranger, had done it within minutes. He folded his arms. "You may go," he said curtly. "Yes, sir," Nia whispered, bowing again. But as she turned to leave, she heard Kenji say softly, "Can she come again tomorrow?" Riku didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched. Finally, he said, "We'll see." Outside, Nia's hands trembled as she carried the empty tray down the hall. Her heart raced. She had spoken to the boy. She had broken the rule. She expected to be scolded again, maybe even fired. But as she reached the kitchen, Mrs. Saito simply looked up from polishing silverware and narrowed her eyes. "What did you do?" "Nothing," Nia said quickly. "I just gave him breakfast." "Then why did the master speak to you personally?" the woman demanded. Nia hesitated. "Because," the boy smiled. Mrs. Saito froze for a moment, the cloth in her hand stilling. Then she scoffed. "Don't fool yourself. You're just a maid. The master's kindness doesn't reach your kind." Nia bit her lip, swallowing the sting of those words. "I didn't do it for kindness," she said quietly. "I did it because he's a child." She went back to her duties, but her thoughts were elsewhere, on Kenji's laughter, his words about sunlight, his small hands searching for her face. Later that evening, while she was folding napkins, a soft piano melody drifted through the air again. But this time, the music was lighter, still hesitant, but no longer sad. She paused, listening. The melody changed suddenly, rising into the same rhythm she had used while telling her tortoise story earlier. She smiled, tears welling in her eyes. He remembered. At that moment, Riku Tanaka stood at the top of the stairs, listening too. His son was playing a happy tune for the first time in years. He turned his head toward the servants' hall, his thoughts unspoken but clear. That woman, she did something I couldn't. The morning after Kenji's laughter filled the house, something subtle changed in the air of the Tanaka mansion. The servants walked more quietly, their eyes flicking toward the grand staircase where Riku Tanaka descended like a shadow in motion. His expression, as always, was calm, unreadable, and distant, but there was something sharper behind his gaze now, something thoughtful. Nia was polishing the piano when he entered the music room. She froze mid-motion, cloth in hand, bowing immediately. "Good morning, sir," she murmured. Riku studied her for a long moment, his eyes cold and searching. "You spoke to my son again." Her heart thudded. "Yes, sir. I was cleaning here, and he started playing. We talked a little." His jaw flexed. "You were told not to interfere." "Yes, sir," she said softly, "but he wanted to talk. I couldn't ignore him." For a few seconds, only silence stretched between them. Then, to her surprise, Riku stepped closer to the piano. His fingers brushed over the keys but didn't press them. "He laughed last night," he said quietly. "For the first time in months." Nia's lips parted in surprise, but she didn't speak. She sensed he wasn't really talking to her, but to the air, to himself. "My son doesn't trust easily," he continued, his voice a mix of pride and sorrow. "He has difficulties." Nia looked up, meeting his eyes carefully. "He has a beautiful mind, sir. He just needs someone to listen." Riku's gaze sharpened. "You think I don't listen?" Nia swallowed hard. "Not with words, sir. Maybe not the way he needs." The air went still. It was the first time anyone had ever spoken to him like that, softly, but without fear. Riku's expression didn't change, but his silence was heavier than anger. Finally, he turned away. "Do your work. That will be all." "Yes, sir," Nia whispered, bowing deeply. When he left, she exhaled shakily, her hands trembling. "I should have stayed quiet," she thought. Men like him don't like being told the truth. But deep down, she didn't regret it. That evening, the entire mansion buzzed with quiet tension. Riku had cancelled 2 meetings, something unheard of. The staff whispered nervously. "He's distracted," Mrs. Saito muttered. Ever since that maid arrived. Nia pretended not to hear as she cleared the dinner table. But as she lifted the last tray, she felt a tug on her sleeve. It was Kenji, smiling shyly. "Will you tell me another story?" he asked softly. Before Nia could reply, a voice came from behind them, deep and firm. "Kenji." The boy stiffened immediately. Riku stood at the doorway, one hand in his pocket, eyes dark and unreadable. "It's time for bed." "But," Kenji began. "No arguments," Riku said gently, though his tone left no room for defiance. "Tomorrow." Kenji sighed, then turned toward Nia. "Good night, Miss Nia." "Good night, Kenji," she said, smiling warmly. "Dream about the tortoise." As he left, Riku's gaze lingered on her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, he said, "You shouldn't encourage him too much." "Encourage him to what, sir?" she asked quietly. "To hope," Riku said simply, and then walked away. That night, Nia sat on her narrow bed, thinking about those words. To hope. How could anyone be afraid of a child's hope? She couldn't understand a man like Riku Tanaka, a man who had everything, yet carried so much emptiness inside. But somewhere in that emptiness, she sensed something else. Pain. The kind of pain that builds walls higher than love can climb. The kind she knew all too well. The next day, Kenji found Nia in the garden. She was kneeling beside a patch of lavender, trimming it carefully. The air was fresh after the rain, and the scent of blossoms filled the air. "You came outside," she said, surprised. Kenji smiled. "I wanted to hear the wind. The leaves sound happy today." Nia laughed softly. "They do, don't they?" He turned his head toward her voice. "Can you teach me the sounds you know? You always say things sound like something." She paused, thinking. "All right," she said. "Touch the flowers." He knelt beside her, small fingers brushing the petals. "Soft," he whispered. "Yes," Nia said, smiling. "That's how joy feels, soft, gentle, warm." "What does sadness feel like?" he asked curiously. Nia looked at the gray clouds above them. "Like rain. Cold and heavy. But it makes things grow." Kenji nodded slowly. "Then maybe sadness isn't bad." "No," Nia said, touching his shoulder gently. "Sometimes sadness is how the heart breathes." From the window above, Riku watched. He had been in his office when a guard reported that Kenji was outside with the maid. At first, he had been ready to scold them both, but when he looked down and saw his son smiling, head tilted toward the sound of laughter, he froze. He hadn't seen that expression since his wife was alive. Something stirred in him, a mix of longing and guilt he couldn't name. Later that evening, as Nia helped prepare dinner, Mrs. Saito approached her. "The master wishes to see you." Nia's hands stilled. "Me?" "Yes." "The study." "Now." Her stomach tightened as she walked through the quiet hall. When she reached the tall wooden doors, she hesitated before knocking. "Come in," said Riku's low voice. The study was vast, lined with books and glass windows that overlooked the city lights. Riku sat behind his desk, a cup of black coffee steaming beside him. He didn't look up when she entered. "You've been spending time with my son," he said. "Yes, sir." "You've been teaching him." She swallowed. "Only little things. How to listen to the world. How to smile." He looked up then, his eyes dark but not angry. "He likes you." "I like him too," she said simply. Riku's fingers tapped against the desk. "I've hired countless therapists and tutors. None of them reached him. Why do you think he listens to you?" Nia hesitated, then said quietly, "Because I don't see what he can't do. I see who he is." Her words hit him like a quiet blow. He leaned back, studying her face carefully. There was no arrogance there, no attempt to impress, just truth. Finally, he said, "My son hasn't left the house in months. If I allowed it, would you take him outside? To the park?" Nia blinked in surprise. "Me? Alone?" "With my driver," Riku clarified. "He trusts you." "Perhaps, it's time I tried to." She nodded, her heart fluttering. "I'd be honored, sir." That weekend, under a gentle blue sky, Nia and Kenji visited a quiet park outside the city. It was the first time Kenji had stepped beyond the mansion gates since the accident. He held her hand tightly, cautious but curious. So many sounds, he whispered. Birds, footsteps, water. That's the fountain, she said, guiding his fingers to the cool spray of water. It's like the laughter of the earth. He giggled. You always say strange things. She smiled. Strange keeps the heart alive. For hours, they walked, listened, and talked. Children ran past them, laughing. Some stared at Kenji, but Nia smiled at them, disarming their curiosity. Soon, one brave boy came over and said hello. Kenji smiled shyly and waved back. It was a small moment, but to Nia, it felt enormous. When they returned, Riku was waiting in the front hall. His posture was straight, his expression unreadable, but when he saw his son's relaxed smile, a flicker of relief passed over his face. How was the park? He asked. It sounded beautiful, Kenji said excitedly. Miss Nia said the fountain was laughing. Riku looked at her. Laughing? Nia smiled gently. That's what he called it. Riku's lips twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. You have an unusual way of seeing the world, Miss Nia. I only try to make it a kinder one, she said softly. That night, when the house was quiet, Riku stood outside Kenji's room. He heard his son humming softly a simple tune. It took him a few seconds to recognize it. It was a song his late wife used to sing. His throat tightened. He walked away before the memories could crush him. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with new energy. Kenji woke up early, asking to play outside. Nia joined him after finishing her chores. She taught him to recognize sounds, the difference between sparrows and crows, wind through leaves versus wind against walls. You learn fast, she told him. He grinned proudly. I like learning with you. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps behind them made Nia turn. Riku was standing a few meters away, arms crossed. You seem to have taken your teaching duties seriously. Nia smiled nervously. I didn't know I had duties, sir. You do now, he said. Then, after a pause, would you join us for lunch? My son insists. Nia blinked. Me? With you? Riku gave a small nod. Apparently, the household rules have been amended. Lunch was an unfamiliar experience for everyone. Nia sat stiffly, unsure where to look. Kenji chatted happily, telling his father how Nia made him touch flowers to see their colors. She says pink feels like a smile, Kenji said proudly. Riku's eyes flicked to her. Does it? Yes, Nia said softly. It's a color that forgives everything. For the first time since she met him, he actually smiled, small, brief, but real. I see, he murmured. After lunch, Kenji was taken by his tutor, leaving Nia and Riku alone in the dining room. The silence between them was thick, filled with unspoken thoughts. You're different, he said finally. You speak like the world still has beauty. Because it does, sir, she replied. You just have to stop looking for it with your eyes. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, almost reluctantly, he said, You remind me of someone. Your wife? She asked gently. The air froze. Riku's expression tightened, the warmth vanishing. That subject is closed. Nia lowered her gaze. Forgive me. I didn't mean to. He stood abruptly. You may go. She bowed and turned to leave, but before she reached the door, his voice stopped her again, quieter, almost hesitant. Thank you, for helping my son. Nia smiled faintly, not turning around. He's the one helping me, sir. When she left, Riku stood alone, staring out the window. The garden below shimmered under sunlight, and for a brief second, he saw them there again, his wife and son, before the accident, laughter echoing through the air. It hurt to remember, but it also made him feel alive again. That evening, Mrs. Saito whispered to the other maids, Have you noticed? The master smiles now. They laughed quietly, but Nia heard them. She didn't smile back. She knew how fragile that change was, how easily warmth could freeze again. In her small room, she looked out the window toward the mansion's glowing windows. You're learning to breathe again, Mr. Tanaka, she whispered. And so am I. Down the hall, in the music room, Kenji's fingers danced across the keys once more. The tune he played this time was brighter than ever, an echo of all the laughter that had begun to find its way back into the House of Shadows. By the third week of Nia's presence, the mansion no longer sounded the same. Laughter, light, musical laughter, drifted down the corridors like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Servants stopped what they were doing whenever they heard it. Some smiled, remembering the silent gloom that had once haunted the place. Others whispered behind polished doors. "She's getting too close," one maid murmured. "The master treats her differently," another replied. "She's just a maid," said Mrs. Saito sharply, though her eyes carried a flicker of worry. "And he'll remember that soon enough." Nia, unaware or pretending not to notice, focused only on her daily routine. Every morning, she helped Kenji with his reading exercises. She used wooden blocks shaped like animals and carved letters for him to touch, teaching him to recognize sounds and textures together. He learned quickly, his laughter frequent, his confidence growing. Sometimes, Riku would appear silently in the doorway, just watching. He rarely interrupted, but every so often, Nia felt the weight of his gaze and found her heart beating faster than it should. One afternoon, while helping Kenji identify objects by touch, Nia guided his small hand over a carved bird. "What's that, Kenji?" she asked. "Soft wings," he murmured. "A sparrow." She smiled proudly. "Yes. You're getting better every day." He grinned, turning his face toward her. "I like learning with you. Everyone else sounds afraid when they talk to me." Her smile faded slightly. "Afraid of you?" He nodded. "They talk like I'll break." Nia took his hand gently. "You're not glass, Kenji. You're gold. The kind that shines quietly." He beamed. "Then you're the sunlight that makes gold glow." Her heart softened. "You say such beautiful things, little one." Unseen by either of them, Riku stood at the door again. His usually cold eyes flickered with something deep and troubled. He'd always believed kindness made people weak, but watching Nia and his son, he wondered if maybe it was the only thing that kept them alive. That night, at dinner, the air was different. Kenji sat between his father and Nia, chatting happily. Riku listened quietly, occasionally nodding, occasionally smiling when Kenji made an especially clever remark. The other servants watched from the walls, shocked. They had never seen the master smile during a meal. But peace doesn't come without envy. Later, as Nia was clearing the dishes, Mrs. Saito cornered her by the kitchen door. "You're getting too comfortable," the woman said coldly. Nia paused, her hand tightening around a plate. "I'm only doing my job." "You're doing more than that," Mrs. Saito hissed. "You're meddling in things you don't understand. The master's world isn't meant for people like you." Nia's chest ached, but she forced a calm voice. "I'm not trying to be in his world. I just want to help his son." Mrs. Saito sneered. "People who say that always want something more." She turned sharply, leaving Nia frozen in place, her heart heavy with doubt. That night, she sat on her bed, the old hurt of being treated as less than bubbling up again. But before her tears could fall, there was a gentle knock. She opened the door to find Kenji holding a small folded paper. "Papa said I should give you this," he said shyly. She unfolded it. Inside was a single line written in neat handwriting. "You're doing well. Thank you, RT." For a moment, she simply stared at the note. Then she smiled, her heart light again. Somewhere deep inside the cold father, warmth had begun to stir, and it was reaching out, even if only in small, silent ways. The next morning, Kenji was quieter than usual. Nia noticed it immediately. "Is something wrong?" she asked. He shook his head, but his lips trembled. "Some of the servants said you'll leave soon." Nia froze. "Who told you that?" "I heard them whisper. They said you're making trouble for Papa." Her chest tightened. "Don't listen to gossip, sweetheart. I'm not leaving you." "You promise," he whispered. She knelt beside him, placing his small hand over her heart. "Do you feel that?" "It's my heartbeat. As long as it beats, I'll keep my promise." He nodded, his fingers pressing lightly against her chest, comforted by the steady rhythm. And above them, through the half-open door, Riku watched again, silently, thoughtfully, his expression caught between gratitude and fear. The storm began on a night heavy with thunder and tension. Rain slashed against the windows, lightning casting silver veins across the mansion walls. Nia was finishing her cleaning rounds when Mrs. Saito appeared again, her voice sharp. "The master is furious," she said. "You took Kenji outside without permission." Nia frowned, confused. "But he said we could walk in the garden after lessons. Kenji told me it was all right." Mrs. Saito crossed her arms. "And you believed a child? Do you think you can just do what you please? You're not special, girl. You're a servant. You've overstepped." "I didn't." "Pack your things. You'll be dismissed in the morning." The words struck like a slap. Nia's breath caught. "Please, let me explain to Mr. Tanaka." "You'll speak when spoken to," Mrs. Saito snapped. "He's not interested in excuses." She turned on her heel, leaving Nia standing alone, trembling as thunder rolled outside. In her small room, Nia sat by the window, watching the rain fall like tears she couldn't hold back. "I was careful," she thought miserably. "I did everything right." But deep inside, she feared Mrs. Saito's words were true. Maybe she didn't belong here. Maybe kindness always ended in heartbreak. Meanwhile, in the main house, Riku paced the study, confusion tightening his chest. Mrs. Saito's report had stirred old fears, rumors of impropriety, staff breaking boundaries, but something didn't feel right. He couldn't shake the image of his son laughing again, bright and free. When he finally went to Kenji's room, he found the boy sitting by the window, clutching his cane, face wet with tears. "Kenji." Riku's voice softened. "What's wrong?" "Miss Nia's leaving," Kenji whispered. "They said she's bad." Riku's brow furrowed. "Who said that?" "Mrs. Saito," Kenji sobbed. "She said Miss Nia disobeyed you." "But she didn't. She just wanted me to hear the rain." Riku went still. The storm outside thundered as he pieced it together. Slowly, anger replaced doubt. "Stay here," he said quietly, his tone so calm it frightened even himself. He strode through the halls, his footsteps sharp and certain. When he reached Nia's quarters, he found her kneeling by her small suitcase, tears streaking her face. "You were leaving," he said, his voice low. She jumped to her feet, wiping her eyes. "Mrs. Saito said she said you didn't want me here anymore." His expression hardened. "And you believed her?" She hesitated. "I didn't want to cause trouble." "Trouble," he muttered bitterly. "That's all they call it when someone does what others are too afraid to do." He stepped closer. "Did you take my son outside?" "Yes," she said honestly. "We only walked by the fountain." He listened to the rain. He smiled. Riku exhaled slowly, the anger draining from his face, replaced by something softer, regret. "Then I should be thanking you, not firing you." Nia blinked, speechless. Behind them, a faint sound broke the tension, small footsteps splashing down the hall. Kenji's voice cried out, panicked and high, "Miss Nia." They turned just as the boy came running, barefoot, tears streaming down his cheeks. In his rush, he tripped on the rug. Nia gasped and darted forward, catching him just before he hit the floor. "Kenji," she cried, holding him close. "I heard them say you were gone," he sobbed. "I didn't want you to go." Riku knelt beside them, his face pale. For a moment, he didn't know what to do, how to touch his son, how to fix what fear had broken. Finally, he reached out, gently resting a hand on Kenji's back. "I'm here," he said quietly. "She's not leaving." Kenji sniffled, his tiny fingers clutching both of them. "Promise." Riku looked at Nia. Their eyes met, his full of guilt, hers full of silent forgiveness. "Promise," he said. The thunder rolled again outside, but inside the room, something shifted. The walls that had once kept them apart began to crack. Later that night, when the storm calmed, Riku stood in the doorway of the servants' corridor. Nia was tucking Kenji into bed, humming softly. The boy's breathing slowed, his small hand still holding hers. When she noticed Riku, she gently freed her fingers and stepped into the hall. "He's asleep," she whispered. Riku nodded, his voice low. "I owe you an apology. I should have listened to him before believing others." "You don't owe me anything, sir," she said softly. "Just keep believing in him." Riku studied her face for a moment. Her eyes were tired, but her spirit was steady, stronger than anyone he had ever known. He felt a strange pull in his chest, something both terrifying and comforting. "I dismissed Mrs. Saito," he said quietly. "What?" "She lied to me. I don't keep liars in my house." Nia's eyes widened. I didn't mean for." He shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong. You reminded me what this house used to sound like before silence took over." She smiled faintly, lowering her gaze. "Kenji makes it easy to care." Riku's voice softened. "You do too." The words hung between them, unspoken feelings wrapped in silence. For a moment, they simply stood there, listening to the distant patter of rain against the glass. Finally, Riku spoke again. "Stay," he said quietly. "Not as a maid. As my son's tutor. He needs you. More than you know." Nia's breath caught. "Tutor? But I'm not." "You're exactly what he needs," he interrupted gently. "Someone who sees him." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of gratitude. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best." Riku nodded once. "I know you will." As he turned to leave, Kenji stirred in his sleep, murmuring softly, "Mama?" Riku froze. The word pierced him like lightning. Nia placed a gentle hand on his arm. "He meant me," she whispered. "He called every woman Mama in his sleep since he lost her. It's how he remembers love." Riku's throat tightened, emotion flickering through his stoic mask. "Then maybe he's remembering what it feels like again." She smiled softly. "Maybe you are too." When Riku looked at her again, something in his gaze had changed. The coldness was gone, replaced by quiet respect and something warmer he couldn't yet name. That night, as the storm faded and the first light touched the horizon, Nia stood by the window of her small room, whispering to the dawn, "The storm didn't break us. It brought us together." And across the mansion, the father and son slept soundly for the first time in years, peace settling over the house that once knew only silence. The morning after the storm, the Tanaka mansion shimmered in soft light. The gardens still dripped with rainwater, and the air carried a scent of renewal. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel heavy. It breathed. Nia walked through the halls quietly, unsure of her place now that Riku had promoted her. She still wore her maid's apron, even though he had told her not to. It felt safer that way. She found Kenji in the music room, his small hands exploring the piano keys. "Miss Nia," he said brightly, "Papa said you're my tutor now." She smiled. "Yes, he did. How do you feel about that?" Kenji grinned. "Happy. Now you can stay forever." Her laughter filled the air. "Forever is a long time, little one. But I'll stay as long as you need me." A knock interrupted them. When she turned, Riku stood at the doorway. His usual cold expression was softer today. "May I speak with you, Miss Nia?" "Of course, sir." He stepped into the room, his posture straight, but his tone humble. "I wanted to apologize for last night." "There's no need." "There is." His voice was firm but gentle. "You were wronged because I trusted the wrong person. I let my fear make decisions instead of reason." Nia shook her head. "You were protecting your son. Any father would." His eyes flickered, almost pained. "Perhaps. But I've spent so long protecting him that I forgot how to let him live." He paused, glancing toward the boy who was humming softly to himself. "You reminded me." Nia met his gaze and saw something she hadn't seen before, vulnerability. It frightened her, but it also made her heart ache. "I'm glad he has you," Riku said quietly. "And I'm glad I do too." Her breath caught, and she looked away quickly. "Thank you, sir." He nodded once and turned to go, but before leaving, he stopped at the door. "You should stop calling me sir. It makes me sound like an old man." Nia blinked in surprise. "Then what should I call you?" A hint of amusement curved his lips. "Riku will do." She smiled nervously. "That might take some time, Riku." He chuckled softly, an unfamiliar sound that made Kenji lift his head in surprise. "Papa, you laughed." Riku turned, his expression caught between embarrassment and warmth. "Maybe Miss Nia's laughter is contagious." Kenji grinned. "Then keep her forever." Riku's smile faded, replaced by something quieter, deeper. "We'll see." That evening, Nia helped Kenji prepare for bed. After tucking him in, she stayed while he drifted towards sleep. "Miss Nia," he mumbled drowsily, "when you talk, I can see colors." "Colors?" she asked softly. "Your voice feels like yellow. Warm and happy." Her chest tightened. "Then I'll keep speaking sunshine for you, little one." When she stepped into the hall, Riku was there again, leaning against the wall. His eyes were thoughtful. "You make him dream," he said quietly. "Do you know how rare that is for him?" Nia smiled gently. "He makes me dream too." For a moment, silence stretched between them, comfortable, almost fragile. Then Riku said, "Join us for breakfast tomorrow. No more eating in the kitchen." She hesitated. "That's not proper." "Proper," he interrupted, "has never made this house happy." The next morning, Nia sat across from him and Kenji at the long dining table. At first, she was stiff and shy. But when Kenji started telling stories about his music practice, laughter bubbled up easily. Riku listened, his face soft, the corner of his lips turned upward. Every now and then, he looked at Nia longer than he should have. She noticed, but neither of them said a word. Later that week, he approached her while she was in the garden, trimming the roses. "Nia," he began, his tone measured, "I'd like to make something clear." She straightened. "Yes. I appreciate what you've done for Kenji. You've given him something no doctor, no tutor, ever could. I only treated him like a child, not a patient," she said simply. Riku's eyes softened. "And that's exactly what he needed." He hesitated, lowering his voice. "You've given me something too. Peace. I haven't known that in years." Nia felt her heartbeat quicken. "That means a lot, Riku. Truly." He smiled faintly, then stepped back. "Let's just keep making this house feel alive again. For him. For all of us." She nodded, though deep inside, she knew what her heart was beginning to whisper. It wasn't just for Kenji anymore. Days turned into weeks, and Nia became a part of the Tanaka household as naturally as sunlight through a window. She and Kenji had formed an unbreakable bond, their laughter echoing through the once empty halls. But with warmth came curiosity. The more time she spent with Riku, the more she realized how carefully he hid behind his composure. He was polite, disciplined, almost mechanical. Yet there were moments when something flickered behind his eyes: loneliness, regret, pain. One evening, after Kenji had fallen asleep, Nia found Riku alone in the library. The golden lamplight painted him in soft hues, and for a moment, he looked younger, less guarded. "You're still awake?" she asked, stepping in quietly. He didn't look up from the book in his hands. "Old habits. I find it easier to read than to sleep." She smiled softly. "You should try a story instead of a business report. Stories heal." He set the book aside and looked at her. "You think everything can be healed, don't you?" "I have to," she said gently. "Hope is the only thing poor people can afford." His eyes lingered on her face. "You speak as if you've known hardship." She hesitated, then nodded. "Back home, I worked since I was 12. My mother used to say, if you can laugh, you can live another day. I guess I learned to find light, even when the world went dark." For a long moment, Riku said nothing. Then, quietly, he said, "My wife used to say something similar." Nia froze. It was the first time he had mentioned his wife. "She was the only one who ever challenged me," he continued, voice low. "She made me believe that life wasn't about perfection, but about love. And then the accident took her. Took my son's sight. Took everything I thought I was." Nia listened, her heart aching. "You blamed yourself." He looked away. "I was driving." Silence fell, heavy but understanding. She took a step closer. "It wasn't your fault, Riku." He gave a bitter laugh. "The world doesn't care about fault. Only results. And mine was a broken family." "No," she said softly. "You still have a family. You just stopped believing you deserved one." He looked at her, then really looked, and in his eyes, she saw the man beneath the armor. The one who longed to be seen, just like his son. Riku exhaled slowly, almost shakily. "You see too much, Nia." "Maybe you've been hiding too long," she replied. Their eyes held, unspoken words filling the quiet room. Then Kenji's voice called faintly from down the hall, and the spell broke. "I should go," Nia said softly. Riku nodded, his voice rough. "Thank you for listening." As she turned to leave, he said quietly, "For what it's worth. I'm glad you came into our lives." Her throat tightened, but she smiled and slipped out, leaving him alone with the ghosts he had finally begun to face. The next morning, Nia found a note on the kitchen counter in Riku's handwriting. "Take Kenji to the city park today. Let him hear the world again." The park was crowded and bright. Nia guided Kenji's hand along the rough bark of trees, let him feel the cool breeze on his cheeks, the laughter of children nearby. "This is the sound of life," she told him. Kenji grinned. "It's loud, but happy." While they played, a few parents nearby whispered, pointing at the dark-skinned woman and the child holding her hand. Nia heard them but ignored it. Kenji didn't notice, he was too busy chasing the sound of music from an ice cream truck. Riku arrived later, standing by his car as he watched them from afar. He had come secretly, unable to resist seeing his son's joy. Nia spotted him and waved. He hesitated, then approached. Kenji turned toward his father's voice and beamed. "Papa, you came." "I did," Riku said, smiling faintly. "I wanted to see you smile." Kenji giggled and held both their hands. "Now we're all together." They walked through the park like that, a small, imperfect family surrounded by life. For the first time in years, Riku didn't care who saw them. When they stopped by a pond, Kenji asked, "Papa, what color is the sky today?" Riku looked up. "Blue." Kenji turned toward Nia. "What does blue feel like?" She smiled. "Like peace. Like finally breathing after holding your breath too long." Riku's gaze lingered on her, soft and full of meaning. "Yes," he murmured, "exactly like that." That night, after Kenji went to bed, Nia walked past the study. The door was ajar, and she heard Riku speaking softly on the phone. "Yes, I'm aware of the rumors," he was saying. "Let them talk. My son's happiness comes first." When he hung up and turned, he found her in the doorway. "You heard." She nodded. "People talk. They always will." He sighed. "They think I've lost control. That I'm distracted by a maid." Nia's cheeks warmed. "I never meant to cause trouble." Riku's eyes softened. "You didn't. They just don't understand what you've given us." She hesitated. "And what's that?" He looked at her for a long, silent moment. Then he said simply, "Life." Her breath caught. She wanted to say something, anything, but words failed her. Instead, she just smiled and bowed her head slightly. "Then I'm glad I came here." When she left the room, Riku watched her go, his heart heavy with feelings he could no longer deny. Outside, the city glowed with lights, but inside the mansion, another light had already begun to burn, soft, steady, and impossible to hide. Spring came quietly, wrapping the Tanaka mansion in soft colors and warm wind. Cherry blossoms trembled along the garden paths, their petals falling like pink snow. Inside the house, the gloom that once filled the walls had almost vanished. The laughter of a child now echoed through the corridors, the music of a piano once again found its rhythm. Nia stood by the veranda, hanging wind chimes with Kenji's help. He was taller now, more confident. He could walk through the halls without his cane, counting steps by memory. Every time the wind moved, the chimes sang softly, and Kenji grinned. "It sounds like the sky is smiling," he said. Nia laughed. "Then we'll make sure the sky never stops smiling." Behind them, Riku watched from the doorway, his expression unreadable. He had been working less lately, choosing to stay home with his son. But every time he looked at Nia, something shifted inside him. She had changed the rhythm of their lives. He joined them quietly, his shoes crunching on the gravel. "You've made the garden come alive again," he said. Nia turned, startled. "I only helped Kenji hang the chimes." Riku smiled faintly. "That's not all you've done." He looked around at the once barren garden, now vibrant with life. "This place used to be a cage. Somehow, you made it a home again." Nia looked down shyly. "Homes need people, not money, to breathe." Riku's eyes softened. "You always say things like that. Simple, but true. Kenji tugged his father's hand. Papa, can we have lunch outside today? Miss Nia says food tastes better in the sun. Riku chuckled. Then we'll eat under the sun. That afternoon, they sat beneath the cherry trees. Nia spread a cloth on the grass while Kenji helped unpack sandwiches. Riku leaned back, watching them with quiet contentment. Kenji bit into a sandwich and sighed happily. It tastes like happiness. Nia laughed. Maybe that's because you helped make it. The boy nodded proudly. Miss Nia says food cooked with love is magic. She's right, Riku said, glancing at her. Though I don't remember the last time I tasted that kind of magic. Nia smiled softly. Then you should come to the kitchen more often. Maybe we can change that. He raised an eyebrow. You'd let me cook? I'd supervise, she teased. Kenji giggled. Papa can't even boil eggs. Riku pretended to look offended. That's not true. I can make coffee. With too much sugar, Kenji laughed. They all laughed together, the kind of laughter that feels like sunlight breaking through clouds. As the day faded, Riku found himself studying Nia when she wasn't looking. The way she smiled at his son, the patience in her voice, the peace she carried, it stirred something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. That night, after Kenji had gone to bed, Riku found Nia in the garden, gathering fallen petals. The moonlight painted her skin in silver. You should rest, he said softly. She smiled without turning. I couldn't sleep. The wind is too beautiful tonight. He stepped closer. You see beauty in everything, don't you? Maybe because I've seen too much ugliness, she said gently. Their eyes met in the quiet night, and something electric passed between them, unspoken but undeniable. Riku's voice dropped to a whisper. You've changed this house, Nia. You've changed me. She looked down quickly, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't mean to. I know, he said, a faint smile touching his lips. That's what makes it real. Before she could answer, Kenji's sleepy voice echoed from the balcony above. Miss Nia. Papa, come see. The moon is smiling. They both looked up. The boy stood there in his pajamas, pointing at the glowing crescent moon. Nia laughed softly. We'd better not keep the moon waiting. Riku smiled, shaking his head. He's right. It's smiling. And in that moment, standing under the quiet moonlight, both of them realized how much their hearts had already changed, how much they belonged to the laughter of the little boy who had brought them together. The peace didn't last long. By early summer, the whispers had escaped the walls of the mansion and found their way into the world outside. The media had caught sight of Riku Tanaka's quiet transformation. The once cold billionaire was suddenly smiling, attending school events, walking through the park with a woman and a child. It didn't take long for rumors to begin. A foreign woman caught the heart of Japan's most private man, one headline read. Another blared, Tanaka heiress replacement. The billionaire and his African tutor. The morning the newspapers hit the stands, Riku was in his study, reading the reports with a tightening jaw. Nia entered quietly, unaware of what had happened. Good morning, she said with her usual warmth. Kenji's already. Her voice faltered when she saw his face. The papers lay scattered across his desk. Her own photo stared back at her, smiling, holding Kenji's hand in the park. Her heart dropped. Oh no. Riku exhaled heavily. They don't care about truth. Only stories that sell. Nia's hands trembled. What are they saying? That you're my mistress. His voice was low, restrained. That you used my son to get close to me. She covered her mouth, horrified. That's not true. I never. I know, he interrupted, his voice firm but quiet. But the world doesn't. Tears burned in her eyes. I should leave. Before I ruin everything. You're not leaving, Riku said sharply. They'll twist it into guilt if you do. She looked at him, desperate. Then what can we do? He hesitated, then said, we tell the truth. Publicly. Her eyes widened. You'd risk your reputation? Riku's expression softened. My reputation is meaningless compared to my son's happiness. And his happiness begins with you. She stared at him, speechless, her heart pounding. By afternoon, The story had spread across every news outlet. Paparazzi swarmed outside the estate gates. Riku ordered extra security, but the flashing cameras were impossible to escape. Kenji, confused by the chaos, clung to Nia. "Why are people shouting?" "They're just curious," she said gently, hiding her fear. "It will pass." But it didn't pass. It grew. The next day, Riku's company board called an emergency meeting. They demanded he end his association with the woman who was tarnishing the family name. When he refused, several investors threatened to withdraw. That evening, Nia overheard him on the phone, his voice calm but full of fire. "You can take your money," he said, "but you will not tell me who deserves respect in my own home." When he hung up, he found Nia standing in the doorway, her eyes full of tears. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes, I did," he said firmly. "You and Kenji gave me back my life. I won't let anyone take that from me." The words broke something inside her, something strong and fragile all at once. A few days later, Riku called a press conference. Cameras flashed like lightning as he walked to the podium. "I've been accused of allowing a woman into my home for selfish reasons," he began, his voice steady. "The truth is simple. She was not hired for me. She was hired for my son, a boy who had forgotten how to smile." The crowd murmured. Riku continued, "This woman taught him how to live again. And in doing so, she reminded me what life truly means." He paused, his gaze steady on the cameras. "Her name is Nia Okoro. And she deserves your respect, not your suspicion." Nia watched from the television in the mansion, her hands pressed to her mouth. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she heard him speak those words. When the conference ended, Riku returned home exhausted but calm. Nia met him in the hall, unsure what to say. "You didn't have to defend me like that," she whispered. He looked at her, eyes tired but gentle. "Yes, I did. Because you defended us first." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "They'll talk more now. They'll twist your words." "Let them," he said quietly. "As long as the truth stays between us, I don't care." They stood in silence for a moment, their hearts beating in rhythm with the falling rain outside. Kenji appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing his eyes. "Miss Nia?" "Yes, sweetheart." He smiled sleepily. "Papa talked loud on TV. Did he tell them your family now?" Riku froze. Nia's breath caught. Kenji yawned and added, "You should be. You make us both happy." He padded back toward his room before either could answer. When he was gone, Nia and Riku looked at each other, eyes wide, full of emotions they couldn't yet name. Finally, Riku said softly, "Maybe he's right." Nia's heart trembled. "What do you mean?" He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe we already are a family." She wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The air between them was thick with everything unsaid. Outside, the rain slowed. The world's noise seemed far away. For the first time in a long while, Nia realized that peace didn't always mean silence, it meant being heard, even when the whole world refused to listen. The next morning, the sun rose pale and uncertain behind the clouds. The Tanaka mansion, usually so quiet, seemed to hum with unseen tension. Reporters still lingered outside the gates. Every time the wind blew, Nia could hear their camera shutters clicking, like the sound of distant thunder. Inside, she moved through the house quietly, tidying things that didn't need tidying, trying to ignore the restless flutter of fear inside her chest. She had never asked for this life in the spotlight. All she wanted was peace for Kenji, and now the world had turned him into a story. Kenji found her in the garden, crouched beside the pond, throwing tiny crumbs of bread to the koi fish. "Miss Nia," he said softly, "why do people take pictures of us?" Nia smiled faintly, but her voice trembled. "Because your papa is important, and when people see him happy, they get curious." "Why?" he asked. "Isn't happiness a good thing?" "Yes," she said, brushing his hair gently, "but not everyone understands it." He frowned, tilting his head. "Do they hate you?" She froze. "Who told you that?" "I heard the guards talking," he whispered. "They said the people outside are calling you names." Her throat tightened, but she forced a smile. "Then they're wrong. And one day, they'll see that." He touched her hand. I already see it. At that moment, Riku appeared at the edge of the garden. He had been on a call since dawn, his voice sharp and controlled, but his eyes looked tired. The wind tugged at his coat as he walked toward them. Kenji, go inside for a while, he said gently. I need to talk to Miss Nia. The boy nodded, obedient but worried. Don't fight, he murmured as he walked away. Riku stood beside her, watching the ripples in the pond. They want me to apologize, he said after a long silence. They want me to say the story about us isn't true, that you took advantage of my kindness. Nia looked up. And will you? No, his voice was quiet, steady. But if I don't, the board will remove me as CEO. The company could lose everything my father built. Nia's heart pounded. You can't risk that for me. He turned sharply. You think this is just about you? Nia, it's about what's right. I won't let them destroy someone's dignity because of prejudice. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't want to be the reason you lose your world. He took a step closer. I already lost my world once. It means nothing without peace in this house. The air between them trembled. She could see the war inside him, the man torn between duty and something far deeper. Riku, she whispered, you have a son who needs you. Don't let them take that from him. He sighed, his shoulders heavy. If they do, I'll build it back. But I won't build it on lies. Before she could respond, the phone in his pocket buzzed again. He didn't answer it. He just looked at her, really looked, and said, if you stay, they'll keep attacking. If you go, they'll think they've won. What do you want? Her answer was soft, but sure. I want to protect Kenji. Riku's expression broke for a second, just enough for her to see the pain underneath. Then you'd better tell me how. That night, Nia sat by her window long after the lights went out. The sky outside was clear, full of stars. The phone on her bedside table glowed faintly, messages from friends back home, news headlines flashing her name. She had become a symbol, a scandal, and a stranger to herself. She heard a knock and turned. Riku stood at the doorway. His tie was loose, his hair slightly disheveled. Can't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. Too many thoughts. He hesitated, then stepped inside. Me too. He leaned against the window frame beside her, their reflections side by side in the glass. The silence stretched between them until he said quietly, I keep thinking about the day we met. You bowed and said good evening, sir, and I thought you were just another quiet worker who'd keep her head down. Nia smiled faintly. And you were the coldest man I'd ever seen. He chuckled softly. I suppose I was. You were broken, she said gently, and you didn't want anyone to see. He turned toward her, eyes dark and thoughtful. And you made me remember what it felt like to live again. Her breath caught. Riku. He reached out, not to touch her, but to brush a strand of hair from her face. You don't have to say anything. Just know that whatever happens tomorrow, I don't regret any of it. For a long moment, they stayed that way, two souls caught between fear and something that felt dangerously like love. Then he whispered, get some rest, Nia. Tomorrow, we decide. When he left, she pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart race. Outside, the wind rustled the cherry trees, scattering petals like falling snow. She closed her eyes and prayed that the world would be kind for once. The next day, the decision came. Riku resigned from his position as CEO. The news exploded across the nation. Headlines screamed betrayal and madness, calling him a fool for love. Stock prices dropped, but he didn't flinch. He stood in his office, calm, while reporters shouted questions through the gates. When he returned home, the house was quiet. Kenji was with his music teacher. Nia waited for him by the piano. You really did it, she said softly. Yes. He loosened his tie. They wanted a choice between power and truth. I chose truth. Her voice broke. And what about your son's future? The company? He smiled sadly. My son's future doesn't depend on money. It depends on me being a father who can look him in the eyes without shame. She covered her mouth to keep from crying. You didn't have to. He stepped closer, his voice low and sure. I did it because you showed me there's more to life than surviving. There's living. There's love. Her tears spilled then, hot and silent. Riku, people will hate you for this. Let them, he said softly. You once told me sadness makes things grow. Maybe this is how we grow. The house was quiet around them, but something in that stillness felt whole. For the first time, Nia believed in a future that wasn't built on fear. The days that followed were a blur of headlines and whispers. Riku's resignation was the talk of the city. Some called him foolish, others romantic. But for Nia, the attention was unbearable. Strangers followed her to the market. Paparazzi flashed cameras whenever she stepped outside. Even Kenji's schoolmates whispered about his foreign teacher. One morning, she stood at the gate, her suitcase beside her. The driver tried to stop her, but she shook her head. Tell Riku I'm sorry, she said. I can't stay. Not while they keep hurting him for it. She left quietly, like a shadow at dawn. When Riku discovered her absence, the entire house froze. She left, he said, disbelief tightening his voice. The staff nodded silently. He turned to Mrs. Han, the cook. Did she say where she was going? She only said she wanted peace, the woman replied softly. Riku's jaw clenched. Peace doesn't exist without her here. He searched for her everywhere, churches, markets, community centers. Every place they had visited together. Days turned into a week, and the city seemed colder without her laughter. Kenji grew restless. He stopped eating, stopped playing piano. One night, Riku found him sitting by the window, holding the folded note Nia had left behind. She said she'd come back, the boy whispered. But what if she forgets? Riku knelt beside him, pulling him close. She won't forget. People who love don't forget. Kenji's small voice trembled. Do you love her, Papa? Riku hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes. I think I always have. 2 weeks later, Riku received a tip from one of his drivers. Sir, I think I saw her, the man said. At a small church on the edge of the city. She was singing. Riku didn't wait for the car. He drove himself, heart pounding as he reached the quiet neighborhood. The church stood modestly under a canopy of trees, light spilling through its stained glass windows. Inside, a small choir was singing. And there she was standing among them, eyes closed, her voice pure and soft as sunlight. He stood at the doorway, unable to move. She looked peaceful, content. But when her eyes opened and met his, her song faltered. The others kept singing as she stepped forward, tears already shining in her eyes. Riku, she whispered. He swallowed hard. You left. I had to, she said, her voice trembling. You lost everything because of me. I didn't lose, he said firmly. I found what mattered. She shook her head. You don't understand. The world will never let you forget. They'll never let your son forget. Then we'll teach him not to listen to the world, Riku said. You taught me that. She covered her face, sobbing softly. I didn't mean to fall in love with you. He took a slow step closer, his voice low. Then let it mean something. When she looked up, his hand was outstretched. Come home, he said simply. Not because I need saving, but because we both deserve peace. Her tears fell faster, but she nodded. Home, she whispered. Yes. He smiled then, the rare, genuine smile she had always hoped to see. Kenji will be thrilled. He's been telling me you were just lost. I was, she said. Until now. That evening, they drove back through the city in silence. The world outside still whispered, still judged, but inside the car, there was only warmth. When they arrived at the mansion, Kenji ran out before the car even stopped. Miss Nia, he cried, wrapping his arms around her waist. You came back. She laughed through her tears, hugging him tightly. I promised I would, didn't I? Riku watched them, his chest heavy with gratitude. The house that once felt cursed was alive again. Later that night, as Nia tucked Kenji into bed, he held her hand tightly. Don't leave again, he whispered. Never, she said softly. Not unless the moon stops smiling. In the hallway, Riku stood by the window, looking out at the night sky. When Nia joined him, he said quietly, I didn't find you to ask for forgiveness. I found you because I realized this house isn't a home without you. Nia leaned against the window frame beside him. Then let's build a new one that no headline can touch. He nodded slowly, then looked at her with quiet certainty. Together. She smiled. Together. Outside, the city's noise faded into the distance. Inside, the wind whispered through the open hallways, carrying the sound of peace. For the first time, the house stood whole again, a place reborn from brokenness, lit by the love of three hearts that refused to let the world decide their worth. The following weeks slipped by like petals carried on a slow breeze. For the first time in years, the mansion was filled with music, not the mournful kind that once haunted its halls, but laughter, the clinking of breakfast dishes, and Kenji's voice echoing across the courtyard as he practiced the piano. Nia sat beside him during lessons, her hands moving gently over his as he played. Listen, not with your ears, she whispered, but with your heart. Let it tell you when the music feels right. Kenji's fingers stumbled, then found the right keys. A bright melody filled the air. He grinned. It sounds happy now. It does, she said softly. That's because you are. Across the room, Riku leaned against the doorway, his eyes steady on the two of them. He still couldn't quite believe how much life had changed since Nia's return. The house that had once been his fortress of solitude had become a home again, a place of laughter, music, and light. When the song ended, Kenji turned toward his father. Papa, will you come to my concert next month? Riku smiled. I wouldn't miss it for the world. It's my first time playing in front of people, Kenji said nervously. What if I mess up? Riku crouched beside him. Then we'll laugh, and you'll start again. Mistakes don't end music, they just change its tune. Kenji smiled faintly. That's what Miss Nia says. Riku met her eyes. She's a very wise teacher. Nia blushed slightly, pretending to focus on the sheet music. Kenji's the one with the talent. As the days passed, preparations for Kenji's performance grew intense. Nia worked with him daily, adjusting his rhythm, teaching him how to feel the piano's vibrations instead of worrying about the crowd. Riku watched their progress quietly, sometimes joining them in the evenings just to listen. One night, after Kenji had gone to bed, Nia lingered in the music room, running her fingers lightly over the piano keys. The melody she played was soft, uncertain, like a whisper between dreams. You play when you think no one's watching, Riku said, his voice breaking the stillness. She turned quickly, startled. You should be resting. He walked in slowly. And miss this? Never. She laughed quietly. It's nothing special. Just something my mother used to hum when she worked. He listened for a moment, then said, It sounds like hope. Nia looked down. She used to say music was a prayer without words. Riku's eyes softened. Maybe that's what this house needed. A little prayer. Silence stretched between them again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of things neither dared to say aloud. Finally, he took a step closer. I wanted to tell you something, he began. She looked up, waiting. Tomorrow, there's a dinner at the Art Foundation. They've asked me to attend, but I want you to come with me. Me, she said, surprised. Riku, after everything. They can whisper all they like, he said firmly. Let them see who you are. Let them see what courage looks like. Her throat tightened. If I go, they'll talk again. About you. About us. Then let them talk, he said quietly. I'm done living for their approval. The next evening, Nia stood at the top of the staircase in a soft ivory dress that one of the maids had helped her borrow from the storage wardrobe. When Riku looked up and saw her, his breath caught. For a moment, the world seemed to fall away. You look, he paused, searching for the right word. Like light. Nia smiled nervously. You look like someone who needs to breathe. He laughed softly. Maybe I forgot how. They arrived at the dinner to a flurry of camera flashes. Heads turned, whispers rippled through the crowd. Nia felt their eyes, the judgment, the disbelief, but when Riku offered his arm, she took it and lifted her chin. Inside, the music was elegant and cold. Guests greeted Riku politely, pretending not to stare. A few approached, all smiles and shallow praise. It's lovely to see you again, Mr. Tanaka. And this must be. Riku didn't hesitate. This is Nia Okoro. My family. The room went still. Nia's heart hammered, but she held her smile. Every pair of eyes that judged her only made her stand straighter. After dinner, when the crowd thinned, Rika led her to the balcony overlooking the city. Are you all right? He asked. She laughed softly. No one's ever called me family before. It felt strange. Beautiful, but strange. Riku turned toward her, his eyes deep with meaning. You are family, Nia. To both of us. Her voice trembled. Do you really mean that? He reached out, brushing a petal from her shoulder. More than anything. For a moment, neither spoke. The city lights glimmered below like a sea of stars. Nia felt the heaviness of her past, the loneliness, the fear begin to melt away. She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. Then I'll stay, she whispered. As long as you need me. Riku smiled softly. Forever might not be long enough. The night before Kenji's concert, the mansion was alive with quiet excitement. The piano was polished to a shine, fresh flowers filled the hall. Kenji practiced one last time, his fingers moving smoothly across the keys. When he finished, Nia clapped softly. Perfect. He grinned. Miss Nia, when I play tomorrow, can you sit where I can hear your breathing? She blinked, surprised. My breathing. It helps me feel safe, he said simply. She smiled, her heart swelling. Then I'll be right in front. Riku stepped forward and placed his hands on his son's shoulders. I'm proud of you, Kenji. Kenji tilted his head. Even if I make mistakes. Riku's voice softened. Especially then.